What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast. Your holy bleep. This is going off the rails edition. Normally, we are a Monday, Wednesday podcast, but we had to bring you an extra episode because of today's madness, today's shenanigans. And with me to help, hopefully, give you an immediate reaction and help break it down is Ron the Mad Dog McCleese. What's up, Ron?
Wow, what a flurry of moves today! I had my head spinning. I was dizzy for some time. There was loss of breath. Name it all happened today, and it was just one blow after another. I mean, this just Twitter was going off. So that's why we had to do this show. Like you said, there's just too much going on for us to not talk about it. I mean, I don't know that we could sleep tonight if we didn't do this.
100%. So tonight we're going to talk some Ezekiel Elliott news. We're going to talk Sammy Watkins. We're going to talk Jordan Matthews. There's a lot to get into, a lot of instant reaction we wanted to give you, and we'll get there in just a moment. But Ron, preseason's going hot and heavy right now. Obviously, there was game Wednesday. There was a bunch on Thursday, and then even more tonight. Is there a player or two that have played so far that you've been really impressed by, that you're thinking, this guy is worth keeping an eye on? Obviously, you don't want to overreact to one preseason game, but a guy you're going to keep monitoring as the preseason rolls along and maybe becomes a guy that, in deeper leagues or, in Dynasty becomes someone you're more interested in?
Well, I think the storyline, like you said, we don't want to get too caught up in this and think too much of preseason, but I definitely think, and I wasn't really on the Trubisky bandwagon, but I think last night he proved in this game, even though it was preseason, that he can play in the NFL with the big boys, even though I don't care if it's second, third string defense. Denver's defense, even their backup guys could probably go start somewhere else in the NFL and say like the Browns, for example. But I don't read too much into that. My takeaway from him real quick was just how comfortable he looked in the pocket and his pocket presence, and then being able to evade, rushers and kind of make something out of nothing. There was one throw he made across his body, scrambling to the right, and it was dead right on. I mean, that's what I like to see from a young quarterback, is just the ability to, when everything else breaks down, not completely just lose control of everything and still be able to find an outlet, find a receiver, find breaking over the middle or tight end, what have you. So I think that really surprised me last night, was just him looking more NFL ready than I could ever have expected. So I think that was, for me, again, unbiased, because I wasn't really a Trubisky guy, and I'm still not. It's cause for optimism, I guess, if you're a Bears fan.
100%. Yeah, and especially after the poor performance Mike Glennon put on, it was nice to see Trubisky come in, look comfortable. He made some good throws. I thought it was hilarious that Victor Cruz and Ruben Randle were out there making the plays. I heard Frank, Dynasty Frank, screaming in New York about,
see that salsa dance, right?
Yeah, about the pasta gravy and the Ruben Randle and Victor Cruz, and they both almost had I think Cruz had a touchdown, Ruben Randle almost got one. He was on the doorstep. But yeah, I'm with you. Trubisky looked a lot better than I expected. I was really impressed with him. I'm really curious to see if he gets a start. In the week 2, week 3 of the preseason is the key game. So I want to see if he gets a start. I think there's a legit shot he's your week 1 starter for the Bears. And honestly, if I'm a Kevin White owner, Cam Meredith owner, Zach Miller owner, I'm a little more optimistic about that. And even if he's manageable, like that's just more good stuff for Jordan Howard. I'm going to pick a quarterback too, and that's Desean Kaiser, a guy that I've been obviously super excited about all year. I'm going to continue to say he was the best quarterback in this draft, but he impressed me. He looked really good.
Strong words there, Kyle.
I know he was facing third, fourth team. Not exactly your starter, but he was making some great throws. Richard Mullaney, the kid out of Alabama, was making some. I mean, he was dropping dimes right in the hands. I think he had almost 884 yards, 2 touchdowns. Drove the Browns down for that winning touchdown. So, it's preseason. I don't want to go too crazy, but if we're sitting here in week 1 and Trubisky and Kaiser, aren't the starting quarterbacks for their respective teams, I would be very surprised. A couple other nuggets: watch Dalvin Cook, watch Leonard Fournette. They both look good. I was excited to see them play a little bit. Want to watch them as they kind of go through preseason and get a little bit better. But they both showed flashes of things I like. And Jonathan
Speaking of
Williams,
flashes,
go ahead.
can I talk about one running back before we mention your running back? And that was D'Angelo Henderson last night against my
Mm-hmm.
Bears defense. I know it's like Swiss cheese; it's got so many holes in it, and it's not even funny. But still, being able to break off those runs, I mean, that's kind of what he did in college. I mean,
Yeah.
for being such a small little guy, 5'9", you know, it's crazy to see him run and hit those big ones. But I think that's another player that is going to kind of get lost in the sauce in Denver with Jamal Charles still, being on that depth chart, probably the second guy, after Anderson. So just a
Yeah.
guy to kind of monitor in dynasty leagues and kind of being ready to pounce on if there's an injury to CJ, or Charles goes down.
Well,
God
and
forbid
with
that would happen.
yeah, and with Devontae Booker already banged up dealing with that wrist issue, Jamal Charles, he has two reconstructed knees, so those could go at any moment. I think Henderson's definitely a guy that I'm interested in. He's another guy that I want to monitor as the preseason goes along, see what kind of effort and touches and all that good stuff that the coaching staff give him, and see if he can become a guy that obviously probably not in redraft. Unless we have unless there's just a massacre of all the running backs.
Just put him on your watch list, basically.
But
That's what you do.
absolutely, and if he's floating out there in your dynasty leagues, I think he's absolutely worth an ad. But let's talk about what everybody's here to see, Ron, and we'll start with the Ezekiel Elliott news. Rumblings started on Thursday that major news was coming. It was finally going to find out. He is suspended for 6 games. Obviously, that is the standard for domestic violence. Apparently, the NFL found enough evidence between just statements and pictures, and I'm not going to get into that. Obviously, domestic violence is terrible. Yeah, there's no excuse for it. So at this point, Ron, he's out 6 games. Plus, the Cowboys have a Week 7 bye, so we will not see Ezekiel Elliott until Week 8 at this point. Now, the NFL has set a precedence in previous years, and maybe, that changes this year because of the domestic violence. But a lot of people have, went back to the NFL, kind of challenged them or had a basically, hey, here's what I did, here's what happened. And oftentimes they'll reduce the sentence. If you're a betting man, do you expect it to get reduced from 6? Or if you're planning out right now, you think it's 6 games and it won't shift from that?
Well, I don't even want to get into the whole what's worse, domestic violence or, substance abuse or what have you. But just compare it to Le'Veon Bell last year in the aspect that, it was a 4-game suspension, got reduced to 3. Everybody was freaking out about that. Yeah, I mean, you have to freak out, especially if you're like a Zeke dynasty owner in the short term because you have to do without him. But if you haven't drafted yet, you have the choice, the option to say, I'm not going to touch Ezekiel Elliott, or I don't want to own him unless it becomes a value. Mm-hmm. But then the other flip side of the coin is a lot of people thought that about Le'Veon Bell last year. They chose not to draft him, and he wound up being a league winner for a lot of people, and I bought into that. So I went out there and got him thinking it's going to get reduced. I mean, Tom Brady's suspension, he drug it out as long as he possibly could, and then we saw it could bleed into next year. So, I mean, who knows what's going to happen? That's the problem with it's like a dice roll drafting Ezekiel Elliott right now because you don't know. You really don't know if he's going to play the first 6 games and then take this suspension and maybe it gets reduced to 4. So we just don't know. There's that just whole cloud of uncertainty, even though we know what the suspension is right now that's been levied.
So let's say it's 6 games. And the Cowboys obviously have their Week 7 bye, so you won't get him back till Week 8. In redraft leagues, where are you taking Ezekiel Elliott?
Wow, that in redraft leagues it's really tough because you think that if he's not going to be in your lineup till Week 8, I mean, you have to assemble a solid squad around him to help you weather the storm and keep your head above the water. So, for me, I mean, I think he's like 5th round or later for me to even touch him.
Yeah, you're not going to own Zeke this year.
Yeah,
I can just tell you now. I did put a poll on Twitter earlier today. I got over 120 votes, so pretty sizable. 11% of the people said they would take him in the 1st round. 28% said second round, 36% said third round, and another 25% said no thanks. They won't draft him.
I'm no thanks then, I guess.
For me,
For redraft.
I think third round is where I would take him. I was doing my rankings earlier and kind of adjusting, obviously, for Zeke and for Darren Mcfadden and the receivers, which we'll get to here in a second. But I think I put him at running back 11, and that might be a little aggressive. There's definitely some names that if you draft him early, there's some running backs that I'm going to put out a full.
I was just going to say, are you taking him over Devonta Freeman in that same ballpark?
So here I'll read you the list, and you can tell me if you agree or disagree with anyone I take. So I am taking David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, Freeman, LaShawn McCoy, Jay Ajayi, DeMarco Murray, Todd Gurley, Jordan Howard, Melvin Gordon, and Lamar Miller. That's kind of my top 10 basically at running back. Beyond there, it's Zeke at 11. I think
I'd take him over Lamar Miller. that's pretty much the only one on that list.
Maybe you're a little higher than you think.
Maybe.
Would you take Dalvin Cook or Zeke?
I'm going to go Dalvin Cook because I think we've seen enough to know this guy can play and he's going to get opportunity and he's the best back on that team. So, yeah, I think volume is going to be there for this guy. I like him. In PPR, I like him even more.
Ty Montgomery or Ezekiel Elliott?
I'm going to go Ty as much as it pains me to say, but
Spencer Ware or Ezekiel Elliott?
I'm going Zeke there.
What about in PPR? Would you take Christian McCaffrey or Ezekiel Elliott? Christian McCaffrey, who looked really good, really comfortable.
Go Christian.
You're gonna go McCaffrey?
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't do it, but I understand. Like, he looked really good. I was really impressed, and their offense seems to be adjusting a little bit. So yeah,
they're gonna find ways to get him the ball, and that's kind of what it comes down to. Is he's just too good to not be used?
Yeah, I think 15-20 is kind of where you're sitting with him, and that's probably depending on how you draft, like the 4th, 5th round. So yeah, there's gonna be somebody in your league that's just gonna be more comfortable than you are, and that's
they're going to be a riverboat gambler in your league. There's going to be one or two of those guys, and they will do it.
And if he comes back and you're able to cobble together enough, it's just you're going a full 7 weeks at this point, and that's really hard to do, especially in leagues where you have 11-week, 12-week, even 13-week regular seasons. That you're basically getting Zeke for 4 to 6 weeks plus, and then assuming you make the playoffs, obviously he'll be super valuable then, but. That would be really, really hard, if you have to kind of cobble it together for that long.
I'll say this much. If you're in like a keeper league, though, and you have, like, say you're already keeping maybe 2 good backs or 2 good receivers, then maybe taking him in the 3rd or 4th round is not that big of a risk. Say you're already keeping David Johnson.
Right.
Or
say you drafted Jordan Howard last year, in like the 9th or 10th round, and even if you keep him in the 8th, then would you consider taking maybe Zeke in the 2nd, knowing you already have that Howard, and then you can just cobble together your RB2?
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely make an argument. I would think more like early 3rd, mid 3rd to really make that gamble, but 2nd might be still a little too rich for my blood.
So let's talk about potential replacements for Zeke. Obviously, this is an offense where, 2 years ago, Darren Mcfadden was really good. Over 1,000 yards, had a strong season. I think he was like RB12, even though he didn't. He didn't even play.
He went on a run late in that season. He was really good, but he was getting high volume too, though.
Right. So right now, Darren McFadden's in the 13th round. Obviously, that's just not happening. But on FF Calculator, I was looking. Earlier, if you are looking at Darren McFadden, how high do you expect his ADP to rise? I can give you some names that are kind of going in ranges, and you can let me know if where you're at. So let's go down. Okay, so if you're in the 8th round, and there's names like Terrence West, Kareem Hunt, Samaje Perine, Duke Johnson. Would you take Darren McFadden over any of those guys?
I think maybe over Perine. in redraft just because he's struggling right now. It looks like,
Hmm.
and I think we're kind of underestimating Fat Rob. I think that's his job until he loses it, until P. Ryan shows that he can be trusted and pass pro and hold on to the football. I mean, those are important things. Um, I think I prefer Duke Johnson just in PPR leagues. The upside's there, and I would say probably those would be the guys I definitely would say I would take over him.
Yeah, it feels like about the right range just because, Terrence West, he's in a committee. Kareem Hunt and P. Ryan, those are obviously guys with a ton of upside, but both, we expect them to be backups, at least initially. Would you take Frank Gore or Darren McFadden?
I'm going Gorg for the consistent production that he offers every year.
Derrick Henry or Darren McFadden?
I'll go upside. I'll go Henry because I think he's going to get enough carries and vulture enough TDs.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're more comfortable kind of mid to late eighth.
Yeah, I was thinking more like ninth, and
I feel like he'll go higher though. Like if you're the Zeke, say you draft Zeke in the, I don't know, second or third round, and you have to ensure you want to lock up that backfield. You're like, you know what?
Exactly.
I want that backfield, and I'm gonna pay a little bit more. Like, if you own him and you're looking to make sure you lock it up, I think the sixth round is probably the area where you're gonna have to like kind of reach to grab him. Does that feel fair to you?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to do it that early. I'd probably more looking for him in the 7th to 8th round range. But I mean, I could definitely see people doing that.
Like
I just think it's a
Doug Martin,
little
Paul
too much.
Perkins, Tevin Coleman, LeGarrette Blount are all going at the back of the sixth. If you're the Zeke owner, would you take any of those running backs over?
I'll take a shot on Paul Perkins. I
Yeah.
think the opportunity can be there for him to seize that role and run away with it. So he'd probably be the only one.
Yeah, I'm going to be very interested to see kind of how his ADP rises. I feel like he's going to go in the sixth, maybe even a little bit higher, just
Well, I
because.
think all that it depends a lot on the news we hear and
Yeah.
kind of how Zeke's fighting it, how much he's going to fight it, and how long that we think the appeal process is going to draw out. I mean, obviously, no one has. It's not science. We don't know for sure, but I think the more and more information that we're given on this topic and how he's approaching fighting it, I think that could also play into it. But if he agrees to accept it early on and before drafts, yeah, I mean McFadden's gonna spike to that 6th round range.
That is the other concern of mine is that he tries to fight it too long and ends up playing like week 1 and then misses time. I don't know. That's just something else. Let's say it gets reduced to 4 games, or maybe even less. But let's say 4 games for now. Are you more comfortable taking him in the second round? Yeah,
100%. That would be my comparison to Bell last year, which I was still okay with taking Bell before he got reduced to 3 games. So with the 4-game suspension, I was fine with taking him in the first round.
Yeah. So fourth, if it's 4 or less, you'll take him in the first. But once it gets to like 5 and 6, then you're hitting that bye week, and then now you're missing so much more of the season, and
Exactly.
that makes it harder. And that's perfectly fair. I do want to throw out a few other names. Like I said, I'll have an article up on Fake Pigskin pretty soon, but I just do want to give you guys some names. Obviously, I like Terrence West, 8th round. So and then the thing about him I like is you have a potential to not only have Terrence West as a guy who could fill in immediately in the 8th round, but when Zeke returns, you could still be playing Terrence West as an RB2 or a flex in standard leagues and be pretty happy. Jacquizz Rodgers, 9th round. I like him. Obviously, Doug Martin's going to start suspended, so Rodgers is probably your guy for at least the first 3. So he becomes a guy that, especially if it gets reduced to 3 or 4 games, I like a lot more. And then you hit on him earlier, Ron, but Rob Kelly, he's going in the 9th round, middle of the 9th round in PPR. Obviously, doesn't have quite as much of a role in the passing game, but this is a guy we saw be super valuable. And if you can get a starting running back for a good offense in the 9th round, I think that's definitely a scenario where maybe you're a P Ryan guy, maybe you think that transition happens, but my guess would it'll be at least after the first month or so, and between the waiver wire and all that good stuff, you can kind of find ways to do it. Now,
Yeah, it's crazy because Rob Kelly seems like nobody wants to own him, but he's kind of got that Jeremy Hill stigmatism to him now, where it's like
it's
the guy's going to get work, he's going to
yep.
get touchdowns, but nobody wants to draft him. It's
Nope.
like,
Nope.
you know, are we missing something here?
No, I'm not. I wrote an article a month ago about how I'm taking him in as many drafts as I possibly can. Now, in terms of the first 6 weeks with Zeke out, do you think Dak gets a little more opportunity? Maybe they throw a little more, and is that good news for Des Bryant, Jason Witten, Cole Beasley, and the like?
Oh man, I want to wear my Dez Bryant jersey tonight, but I didn't. I thought I'd save that for a preview, but um, I'm definitely on board with them kind of, loosening the reins on Dak and kind of letting him, open up the offense a little bit, spread his wings because I mean the targets are there with all the receivers they have. I mean even guys like Cole Beasley, working out of the slot, and now you got a tight end emerging, with old man Jason Witten still there. So I mean, there's still guys that can catch the ball. I mean, Terrence Williams, he's nothing flashy, but he's a guy that can make some big plays here and there. So I just think that there's a lot of guys, and even Noah Brown, the rookie from Ohio State. So there's a lot of receivers there that I think can make big plays. Maybe not on a consistent basis outside of Dez. That's his mo. Yards after catch, he's one of the best in football, and that's what makes him one of the best receivers. Just got to be healthy. So I think so, man. I think this is going to be an opportunity for them to kind of let them see where the offense can go with more of an air attack, and see if Dak's ready for that.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see that potential. Dak, obviously, we'll get into our full NFC East preview on Monday. Make sure you check back for that. But just a little preview. I'm not super excited about him this year, but I would like to see him open it up and see what his full potential is. Let's talk about the next big trade. I was sitting there. I was thinking, oh man, the Cowboys stole the day. There's so much talk about, and the Buffalo Bills see this and they go, hold my beer. We need some attention. And so first they decide that they're going to ship off Sammy Watkins, who, you pointed this out before the show, Ron, but they didn't pick up his options. So obviously, they're ready to let him walk into free agency. They didn't envision him kind of being a part of this team going forward. And they shipped him off to the Rams. So I guess let's start with Sammy and kind of your expectations with him. Obviously, I'm a big Jared Goff guy, so I love this for Goff. But in terms of Sammy, in terms of a guy going in the third round, I guess first, where do you think his ADP will kind of settle at? And, how early are you comfortable taking him personally?
I think he's definitely got to fall at least around Peyton, possibly even two, depending on what league you're playing in. To me, it's the Rams. I mean, we're gonna have that sour taste in our mouth with drafting Rams players.
But they're not your Jeff Fisher Rams. They're a new and improved Sean McVay. And I think, I'm with you there. Like, obviously, it's the Rams. Obviously, Jared Goff didn't look great. But
McVay was also running a lot of new two tight end packages, and these play calling in practices and everything. So I don't know how much that plays into it, and if that's going to help maybe set up more running plays for Gurley, open more holes for him. But they need to get that offense going. I think it really all starts with Gurley, and then once they can get a consistent running game established, I think that you could, if Goff is able to learn, and the maturation process is a little bit quicker for him this year, I think they're giving him all the weapons he needs to succeed, and they're putting the right coaches in place. So there's definitely some optimism here with the LA Rams, and I think that they're going in the right direction. They have the pieces there. The question is, how long is it going to take for Goff to build that chemistry with Sammy? And I think, is he much better than a Tyrod Taylor? I mean, Tyrod Taylor could throw the deep ball. They just didn't. That wasn't how their offense really was ran. So I think it's kind of a similar situation where Goff could probably make those big throws, but is he going to be put in positions to do that early on with Sammy Watkins? So I'm just kind of tempering my expectations, and I'll say that, if he falls any later than, say, the fourth round, I mean, I would be willing to make the investment.
Yeah, when Goff took over last year, I was listening to Ray Summerlin on the Roto World podcast today, and he basically, when Goff went in, the like downfield yardage throws got severely limited. I think that's a Fisher thing, and it was with a rookie quarterback. I'm really hoping he gets a chance to kind of chuck it down the field. Obviously, with Watkins and Robert Woods, who was Watkins' former teammate in Buffalo, and Cooper Kupp and Josh Reynolds and Tyler Higbee, and he's got weapons. He's got guys to throw the football to. So he really needs to really make a strides in year two. Obviously he's got a quick time to kind of get on the same page with Watkins, but there's a lot to like here. Ron, if you're sitting on the clock and you're looking at receivers, are you taking Sammy Watkins or Alshon Jeffrey?
I'm going Jeffrey, and it's not even close for me because he's the number one target. He's going to be the guy that Wentz. I trust Wentz under center a lot more to make those big plays, especially in that division where there's not really that many. The defenses in that division outside of Dallas are not formidable defenses. So I think there'll be a lot of high-scoring games, a lot of throwing in Philly, and I think the beneficiary is going to be Jeffrey, so 100% going to take him.
Are you going to take him over Allen Robinson, Tyreek Hill, or Devontae Adams?
Only one I might take him over is Devontae Adams. That's because I'm a hater of Devontae Adams. But
yeah, we hate Devontae on this podcast.
I think if I'm looking maybe for the safer, more reliable touchdown, I think the touchdowns for Adams are going to go down. He's going to regress. We both agreed on that before, but I still think his upside, even if he regresses, is in that 7 to 8 touchdown range. Is still going to be better than Sammy when it's all said and done. So I think so. I think I'm taking all those guys before I'm taking Sammy.
I'm taking Sammy over Devontae. I don't like Adams at all, but that's me. If you're in a PPR draft, are you taking Sammy Watkins or Jarvis Landry?
Landry for sure.
If you're in standard, does that switch?
Yeah, I think so, because I think we could see the touchdowns. I mean, that's one thing with Landry. You're only going to see probably 5 to 6, maybe the ceiling 7 touchdowns, and whereas Sammy might get to 7 or 8.
What about Crabtree, Golden Tate, or Martavis Bryant?
I think I'm taking all those guys. The only one that's hard for me is Martavis Bryant, just knowing that he's going to stay clean and stay out of trouble. But I think the upside's definitely there in that offense, given where Sammy landed. I think if I was gambling for the high upside play, I think I'd go Bryant.
Yeah, I think both of them are big. Obviously, they're both Clemson guys. They're both big play upside guys.
Exactly.
One of them has Ben Roethlisberger. The other is Jared Goff. So I could definitely see that. I think that's basically the end of the fourth. That's when we start getting into Edelman, Fitzgerald, Willie Snead, Jamison Crowder. I think you have to take Sammy over all those guys. I think we're pretty much in agreement, Ron. I think
How about Brandon Cooks though? Throw one more out there for you.
Give me. See, I don't know. I feel like I'm too pessimistic on Cooks, but I feel like I want Sammy Watkins over Cooks in that situation. What about you?
Cooks. I'm taking
Cooks.
Cooks.
I don't know, man. Every year there's one or two guys that I'm always questioning myself on, and sometimes I get burned by sticking to my guns. Sometimes it ends up working out really nicely, but Cooks is one of those guys. I would say
this: if I can get Sammy in the fourth, and I would have had to take Cooks in the third, then I would prefer to have Sammy in that case. I think maybe a round later.
Yeah. What about Sammy in the fourth or Brandon Cooks in the second?
I'm gonna go Sammy probably.
Yeah.
I think 2's a little too rich for me.
Yeah.
I like him, just don't love him.
Yeah. End of the second, beginning of the third, but you could set up a really nice team with both Cooks and Watkins.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. If you can get them both.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you play your cards right, you're taking either David Johnson or Le'Veon Bell, and then you take Sammy, or then you take Brandon Cooks, and then you take either Aaron Rodgers or like whoever your running back is, Miller, Marshawn, Crowell, and then you grab Sammy as your wide receiver too. Like, I don't hate that, especially because the middle rounds have so much stability with Willie Snead, Jamison Crowder, Brandon Marshall, Calvin Benjamin, Emmanuel Sanders, Pierre Garçon, and PPR.
Calvin Benjamin is not dead, by the way.
No, he looks really good. That's another guy that, he's going in the middle of the 6th right now. He dipped almost as low as basically the end of the sixth. Now he's starting to climb back up. My guess is he probably goes in that fifth, sixth round range with Willie Snead and Crabtree and Edelman and Fitzgerald, kind of in that.
So on your dream team, you'd have like Fat Benjamin and Fat Rob both like
Hmm.
on your roster, right?
Yeah, and I put
'Cause they'd
Bartolo
be great
Colon on there
values.
if I could too. Give me all.
Right?
Give me all. Yeah, give me them all. Just give me them all.
Load them up.
Now, what we could have touched on this a minute ago, but with all these awesome receivers now in LA, I think the case for Todd Gurley being a more reliable fantasy option this year, I think is gone up. I think he's got a much better shot at kind of being a more reliable guy. I think obviously having Watkins being able to take the top off the defense, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp underneath. I think that's a nice enough core where Todd Gurley should see a lot less 8-man, 9-man boxes. And, for a running back that we've seen have explosive ability, obviously talent has not been the question, a better offensive system, he's all of a sudden becoming a guy that, if I'm sitting there, in that middle of the second round, and Ajayi is gone, he kind of becomes the guy that's a lot more tempting if I want a running back.
Yeah, I mean, they're putting those weapons around him all in place, and it's going to definitely open more things up for him long term. Once there's chemistry there, when Goff's able to make some of those throws, make some of those big plays, it's definitely going to help Gurley in his overall numbers. So I think that's a great, hey, he's probably one of the main beneficiaries of this deal. So the other guy I wanted to make note of real quick was Robert Woods. It's like, this guy, man, he's got the worst luck in the world. Finally, he thought he got away from Buffalo. He got away from Sammy. He's a number one receiver in LA, and then boom,
Yeah, but
he
he
gets
works
pimp
so
slapped.
much better as a second. Like if he's got to be doing backflips right now that Sammy's there, and
You think so, though?
yeah, I think he's happy. I think him and Watkins can be a dynamic duo. I think they can develop. I think they're still both young enough, and we kind of hit on it earlier, but there's still a scenario where Watkins walks at the end of the year, and
Exactly.
Robert Woods becomes the one, and then everything figures it out. Our boy Josh Reynolds is obviously going to have to wait a year, and I don't see a scenario
Bummer.
where Cooper Kupp can be a real target monster, and people are kind of getting excited about him. I think
And you still have Tavon Austin. I mean, it's like
yeah,
the
I always
weapons
forget
are all
about him.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's easy to
so
forget about him.
yeah, it will be interesting to see what they do with him. With all these other receivers, if he's still kind of pissing them off or not playing very well, I wouldn't be surprised if they send him to the waiver wire effectively. So let's talk about the shakeup now because Sammy Watkins is gone. Obviously, we talked about it in our AFC East preview, but they brought in Anquan Bolden. They drafted Zay Jones, so those are two receivers. And then they decided it's almost like they had these both kind of going at the same time. And when they got everything to kind of work out, they pulled the trigger simultaneously. They traded with the Philadelphia Eagles and they brought in Jordan Matthews, a trade that, in terms of star power, obviously you'd probably rather have Watkins than Matthews. But for, a team that has dealt with, Watkins missing a lot of time, Jordan Matthews has plenty of potential. He should be there every week. Obviously a guy that thrives in the slot. So you have Zay on one side, you have Bolden, you obviously still have Charles Clay and McCoy. What do you think about Jordan Matthews in Buffalo? Is he a guy that, kind of rebounds a little bit in terms of value? I know, the dynasty community especially had really, gone off the Jordan Matthews bandwagon, and I think people are going to start coming back to it. What about you?
Well, I think the thing with Jordan Matthews is he was getting a boatload of targets. He was getting the opportunities in Philly to kind of be that guy, the go-to receiver for the Eagles. And now with Alshon coming over, I think that obviously took away a lot of his value in the short term, because Alshon only had that 1-year deal. And then the rumors that we heard over and over again actually came true today. So I think coming full circle, I think they intended from day one to get rid of Matthews and make a deal to improve their team, which
Yep.
obviously they did. Having said that, I like him in Buffalo, but I don't know how excited I can get just knowing that again, it's a run-based offense. They're smash mouth football, and we're going to see a lot of Shady McCoy, more of Shady McCoy, and then sprinkle in some of your boy Jonathan Williams. And I think there's going to be a lot of that, and it's not going to really change a lot. So, I mean, my problem is I don't think, over the middle, I think we'll see some catches, a lot of receptions for Matthews. But when I say a lot, I mean, let's say Sammy, they're losing maybe 120 targets when Sammy left, and I don't have in front of me, but think how many they lost with Robert Woods. So, I mean, it's over 200 targets. It's probably safe to say you're losing, and you're replacing these guys with the rookies, Zay Jones, Jordan Matthews, and I mean there's just so many moving parts here. So that I think this guy, he's in an opportunity where the last 3 years he's been over 100 targets. His rookie year 105, 127, 2015, and 117 last year. So if he gets those 120 targets or 110 in that ballpark, I think he can put up similar numbers than he did last year. I mean, you're looking at maybe a 70 to 75 receptions, 800 to 900 receiving yards, and 3 to maybe 5 touchdowns is probably his ceiling. So,
you think that's a ceiling?
I do.
This is a guy that put up 8 touchdowns for each of his first 2 career seasons. Obviously, last year was a big downturn, and I think the coaches didn't want to use him as much. But I mean, he had 16 touchdowns in his first 2 years. I think. I'll tell you, this is what for my projections, I updated them today. 79 catches, 951 yards, 7 touchdowns, 129 targets.
I think the targets, I think all those numbers are right on. I think the only thing I don't agree on is the touchdowns, just because of the other weapons. And Bolden, that's kind of his game, is when they get in the red zone, he's going to be that big preferred target. And, maybe he's clamped down on, and that opens up the middle for Matthews. So maybe he gets some of those touchdowns in close. I just don't know that I see him scoring 8. Realistically, I could see 5 to 6, but I don't know that I'm saying 8 in Buffalo with the type of offense they run, and then also consider that Charles Clay, like you said, he's an option there in the red zone also. So it's tough because I could see it happening, but I would bet against it.
Yeah, and that might be a little closer to his ceiling. Like when I had him at 7 touchdowns, he was a top 25 receiver. I cut him down to 5, and now he's a top 35 receiver. So that's probably a little bit of a safer estimate. But kind of right in that range. Like, would you rather have Jordan Matthews or Tyra Williams?
I'm actually going to go Tyrod Williams because of the offense and because of the uncertainty with Mike Williams and if he plays this season or not. I mean, if he doesn't play this year, I think at the end of the year with that offense, he still finishes with better numbers than Matthews in Buffalo.
Would you take Pierre Garçon in PPR or Jordan Matthews?
I'm taking Pierre Garçon because in that X role, we know what Mike Shanahan's receivers have done and produced time and time again.
Yeah, so I think he's kind of right after that group. I think his ADP will go up a little bit.
I think so.
Yeah,
because of the opportunity.
Absolutely.
It's there.
So if you're in a draft, let's see, Garçon's going in the 7th. Would you take Dante Moncrief or Jordan Matthews?
I'm still gonna go Moncrief and just buy into the hype that we've all bought into with owning this guy, and hope that there's one season in there where we see him just completely blow up and stay healthy. And I will always go back to what a lot of people pointed out is that actually Andrew Luck and Dante Moncrief really haven't played that much together to build that chemistry. So if they're ever both healthy at the same time for say a 8 to 10 game stretch, they can make some sweet music together. So
what about Jeremy Maclin or Jordan Matthews?
I'm actually in PPR. I think I'm going to go Jordan Matthews. Yeah. I could see Maclin maybe scoring more.
I think I'm going Matthews in both formats. The only other one that was interesting to me is Devontae Parker, and I guess that's a matter of, do you want upside with Parker or do you want stability and reliability with Matthews?
I totally want the upside. Plus, your boy Jay Cutler's throwing him the ball. Come on,
Absolutely.
Kyle.
Give me that Cuddy. Yeah, and it's funny. The two guys that were traded for each other could make a nice pairing, especially if you get Sammy Watkins as like your wide receiver 1 or 2, and then maybe your Matthews is your 3 or your 4. Right now he's going in the 11th round. Obviously that's going to change pretty soon, but I think the 7th round, 6th, 7th round.
Yeah, I was thinking eighth. I was
Yeah.
thinking that's where I would look for
Yeah,
him.
I mean, ideally you're getting him in the 8th. My guess would be he's a little bit higher than on average. Okay, so let's talk about Tyrod Taylor now. Obviously, Watkins is gone. Matthews is in. We talked about the other weapons. Does this affect Tyrod Taylor very much for you?
It does somewhat because he just doesn't have. I mean, let's just not kid ourselves. I mean, Sammy Watkins was their biggest weapon. He was outside of Shady McCoy in the running game, but in the passing game, it was all Sammy. So
When he was
now
there.
Sammy's gone. When he was there, when he was actually healthy.
Yeah.
And I guess it's losing both those receivers, and then also thinking about how does Tyrod Taylor mentally feel about this, losing these guys. I mean, I'm sure that he had a bond with these guys, especially Sammy Watkins. I mean, that was his guy. So there's got to be a little bit of he's got to be upset about this. I think.
Yeah, there's probably a little frustration there for sure.
There's got to be some. So how does he handle with that? And is he going to be able to, gel quickly with these new receiving options that he has now? I think Zay Jones, he's already had some time to work with him. I don't think that's going to be a problem. Obviously, we know Clay, that connection's there. I think Clay might be, out of all these guys, the one guy that we're kind of just not even really talking about that I think might get the biggest bump,
For me, though, like I feel like Jordan Matthews operates in a lot of the same areas that Charles Clay is going to try and operate in. So I don't know. I think this actually hurts Charles Clay, and he was becoming a guy that I was kind of interested in just because I thought there would be chances for him, but I'm not sure if they're quite as much anymore. In terms of Tyrod, yeah, I bumped him down a little bit in my rankings, but he's kind of in that basically 15 to 20 range with Carson Wentz, Dak Prescott, Roethlisberger, Derek Carr, Eli. Like there's just guys that I like, but
I want all those guys before I want to take him.
What about Carson Palmer or Tyrod Taylor?
If it's 6 points per passing touchdown and rushing touchdown for quarterback, then I'm probably going Tyrod there. I think I'm still a little hesitant with Carson, thinking he's going to stay healthy all year long and take the hits that he took last year.
Yeah, I mean, Carson does have a nice opening stretch, so I might look to go that way first. But yeah, what about Jay Cutler or Tyrod Taylor?
I'm going to go Cuddy, man, as much as it pains me to say.
Tyrod Taylor or Blake Bortles?
Ooh. I'm actually going to go Tyrod Taylor there.
Yeah, I think I'm taking Tyrod over Palmer, Bortles, and Cutler. If I'm planning on streaming, and I'm comfortable with that, especially with 10 or 12 and one quarterback leagues, I might be a little more interested in Carson Palmer, just especially if it's a 6-point passing touchdown. If it's 4, definitely Tyrod. Tyrod moves up 4 or 5 spots for me in 4-point, but yeah, he's kind of in that 15 to 20 mix, and a guy that I don't love as much now late, but I'd be okay with it.
Yeah. Agreed.
Let's talk about those Eagles though, because Jordan Matthews is gone. Obviously, they brought in Alshon. I think we're both higher than most on him. I think he has a obviously ton of upside. Should be really solid. They brought in Torrey Smith. Nelson Aguilar has, and I was talking to Smola about him, and Jared Smola, Draft Sharks guy, he's joined the show several times. He was saying there's a lot of good stuff about Aguilar. Obviously, this is another thing. Matt Harmon always talks about the drumbeat of the offseason, and you don't want to bite into one thing or two things, but if things keep happening and keep persisting, it's building a solid drumbeat. And Nelson Aguilar might be a thing this year. Obviously not somebody you're drafting, but a guy that, is supposedly going to get him bulk of the looks in the slot when they run 3 wide receiver sets. Is Aguilar a guy you're going to kind of keep an eye on throughout the preseason, kind of keep on a watch list? And maybe he becomes a guy that you can add and help you especially in PPR leagues.
The fact that we're talking about Nelson Aguilar again makes me sick to my stomach. But I mean, at this point, we have to look at the wide receiver pecking order after the smoke's gone away from this big trade, blockbuster trade, and with Jordan Matthews gone, like I said, he had 117 targets last year, so someone's got to get those.
Yep.
And we're looking at guys that came in. Obviously Jeffrey, can he stay healthy? It was a big if. We don't know the answer to that question. Nobody really does. And then you got, Torrey Smith. So I think that there's definitely the opportunity there to do something. I don't know that I'm ready to fully bank on it happening, but.
Yeah, and then they brought in Matt Collins and Bryce Treggs. Matt Collins is a guy that I know the dynasty community is starting to get excited about. Made a nice play in the Eagles opener on preseason. Is he a guy that might be a guy that we're picking up in week 5, week 6, week 7, especially if we get an Alshon injury and becomes a legit guy that you could play in that flex or maybe a wide receiver 3 type position?
Yeah, I believe he caught passes from Mitch Trubisky in college. So this is a guy that I like. I think he can be. They were pretty high on him. I heard them talking him up a lot early on, even after the draft process, and they selected him. So this is a guy that I think they felt they had enough confidence in him and the other remaining wide receivers in this depth chart to go ahead and made Jordan Matthews expendable. So I think that says a lot. I mean, I think that says enough to me to say that I'm interested in some of these other guys and definitely taking flyers on them. Aguilar, you could probably get for next to nothing. Yep. And I think the same could be said for Mac Hollins. So obviously in a redraft, I would say, if I had Alshon Jeffrey and I was handcuffing one of those receivers late as my last round pick or something, I would definitely prefer to have Mac Hollins over Aguilar. I think he showed some of that explosiveness. And like you said, Bryce Treggs, another guy we can't forget about. I think he was converted from a tight end at one time to receiver, but we saw him flash with a couple big games last year. So, again, a player to keep watching in preseason and a situation to keep monitoring because we love these position battles, especially now that there's spots open up in this depth chart for this for the wide receivers in Philly.
Yeah, I think if Carson Wentz is going to throw 600 plus times or close to that, there's definitely going to be a lot to go around. So I do like the Hollins call. I think especially if I'm doing a best ball league and I can get him with one of my last picks after especially if I own Alshon, I think that's a move that I like to make. But there's a lot to monitor. Obviously, we have a bunch of games tonight, Ron. There will be more tomorrow, more on Sunday. And then we'll be back on Monday to talk NFC East. Looking forward to that. But for Ron the Mad Dog McCleese, I'm Kyle Robert, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Peace in the Middle East.